2 weeks ago, I was sitting in a private dining room at one of the most expensive restaurants in Connecticut when my fiance's mother pulled me aside and said, word for word, "Your parents shouldn't come to the wedding. They'll embarrass us in front of our guests." She said it 15 feet away from my father. She didn't know he was standing just behind me. She didn't know he heard every word. I didn't react. I didn't defend them. I just let the silence stretch. What she didn't understand was that the sentence she had just spoken would force into the open something my parents had spent decades keeping private. A truth about what they had been quietly doing for years, but never wanted to reveal to anyone. What happened next took less than 3 hours. And by the end of that dinner, embarrassment had changed directions. My name is Krista Foster. I'm 27 years old. And this is the story of the night my parents were called unworthy by people who had no idea what real worth looked like. 1247 Maple Drive, Stamford, Connecticut. Purchased 1994 for $142,000. I grew up in a house that never changed. Same 3 bedrooms. Same kitchen with the yellow tile my mother swore she'd replace next year for 20 years. Same driveway where my father parked his van every night at 6:47, give or take traffic. The lawn was always cut on Saturdays. My mother grew tomatoes in the backyard, not for aesthetics, but because she said store-bought ones tasted like disappointment. There was a crack in the front step that my father fixed himself in 2003, and then again in 2011. He could have hired someone. He never did. I didn't question any of this growing up. Why would I? It was home. It was normal. It was us. When I was 16, a friend from school came over and said, "Your house is so cozy." She meant small. I heard it in her pause. I remember feeling a flicker of something, not quite shame, but close. Awareness, maybe, that our house was different from the houses in Greenwich, where her family lived, where everything was bigger, newer, designed to impress. I asked my father once, when I was maybe 14, why we didn't move somewhere bigger. He was fixing the dishwasher, again, and he didn't look up. "This house watched you take your first steps," he said. "Why would we leave?" I thought that was sentimental. I didn't realize it was also strategic. I never questioned why we didn't upgrade. I assumed we couldn't afford to. I was 25 when I learned that assumption was completely, spectacularly wrong. Foster Plumbing, established 1991. Revenue $2.8 million annually by 2024. Sold 70% for $4.2 million. My father started working when he was 21 years old. He had $400, a used van he bought for $1,200, borrowed from his parents, paid back in 8 months, and a willingness to crawl under houses that other people wouldn't touch. He worked 6 days a week for 38 years. He missed 3 days total, 2 when I was born, 1 when his father died. I didn't understand, when I was young, what that kind of consistency meant. I just knew Dad left early and came home tired and smelled like copper and PVC glue. I knew his hands were rough and his back hurt, and he fell asleep in his chair watching the news most nights by 8:30. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until much later, was what he was doing with the money he earned. In 1991, he started Foster Plumbing with just himself. By 2000, he had 2 employees. By 2008, 4. By 2024, he had 8 plumbers and 2 office staff, serving the wealthiest zip codes in Fairfield County. Revenue, $2.8 million a year. Profit margin, 18%. In March of 2024, a mechanical and electrical company offered to buy Foster Plumbing. They wanted to expand into our territory. They offered $4.2 million. My father sold 70%, kept 30, still works 2 days a week as a consultant. I found this out at Thanksgiving last year. He mentioned it like he was talking about the weather. Sold most of the company, he said, passing the mashed potatoes. Still go in Tuesdays and Thursdays. Keeps me busy. I remember sitting there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, thinking, how much money do you actually have? I didn't ask. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. A customer once complained that my father charged too much. He told me about it over dinner, almost amused. You're not paying for an hour of my time, he had said to the customer. You're paying for 38 years of knowing exactly which pipe to turn. I thought he sold the company because he was tired. Later, I learned the truth. He sold because he didn't need to work anymore. He just liked to. Stamford Hospital, 32 years, shift 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. My mother has worked the night shift for 32 years. Let me say that again, because I don't think people understand what it means. 32 years of going to sleep when the sun comes up. 32 years of missing dinners, missing evenings, missing the hours when the rest of the world is awake. 32 years of being perpetually tired and never once complaining about it. She's a registered nurse. Emergency department. The shift no one wants. When I was little, I used to wake up at 6:30 and find her in the kitchen, still in her scrubs, making me breakfast before she went to bed. She'd walk me to the bus stop, kiss my forehead, and then go home to sleep for 5 hours before starting her day. Grocery shopping, laundry, whatever needed doing, so she could be awake when I got home from school. I asked her once if she was tired. Tired is a feeling, she said, flipping a pancake. Showing up is a choice. I choose showing up. I was maybe 8. I didn't understand what she meant. Now I do. She never called in sick, never asked for a schedule change, never complained about the hours or the holidays she worked, or the fact that she was at the hospital on Christmas Eve while other families were together. I asked her once, I was older, maybe 20, why she didn't just switch to days. Someone has to be there at 3 a.m. when the emergencies come in, she said. Might as well be me. She said it like it was obvious, like sacrifice was just part of the job description. My mother never complained, not once. I thought it was because she was strong. Now I know. She also had a secret that made every sacrifice worth it. Vanguard statement discovered at age 25 in 2023. I was 25 when I found out. It was an accident. I was home for the weekend, looking for a stamp in my father's desk drawer, when I found a Vanguard statement. I didn't mean to look at it, but the number caught my eye. It was a retirement account. It had 7 figures. I stood there, holding the paper, trying to understand what I was seeing. My parents, the plumber and the night shift nurse, the couple who drove used cars and clipped coupons and hadn't taken a real vacation in 15 years, had over $1 million in a single account. I put the paper back. I didn't say anything for 2 days. Then I asked. My father was in the garage, changing the oil in his Camry, a 2012 model he'd bought used in 2015. He didn't look surprised by my question. He just wiped his hands on a rag and shrugged. We saved, he said. We invested. We didn't spend what we didn't need. But how much? He looked at me for a long moment. Enough, he said. Enough that you don't need to worry about us. Enough that you can make choices based on what you want, not what you need. That's all that matters. I pushed. I wanted numbers. I wanted to understand how this was possible. Krista. His voice was gentle but firm. Money doesn't change who you are. It just reveals who you've always been. I wanted you to become someone without knowing there was a safety net. He went back to changing the oil. I stood there, trying to reconcile the father I thought I knew with the man who had apparently been quietly building a fortune for 3 decades without ever mentioning it. I thought I knew my parents. But I only knew the version they chose to show the world. The quiet version, the invisible version, and in Connecticut's wealthiest county. Invisible meant poor. Greenwich Academy Preschool Charity Event, February 2024. I met Garrett at a charity event. I'm a preschool teacher at a public school in Greenwich, which means I spend my days wiping noses, mediating fights over crayons, and trying to convince 4-year-olds that sharing is, in fact, a virtue. It doesn't pay well. It's exhausting. I love it. The charity event was for the private preschool, the one where tuition costs more than my annual salary. I was there because my school had been invited as a community partner, which I think was their way of making themselves feel generous. Garrett was there because his family had donated the silent auction centerpiece, a weekend at their house in the Hamptons. He approached me near the cheese table. I was stress-eating brie and trying not to look as out of place as I felt. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way." He smiled. It was a good smile. Warm. A little self-deprecating. Not the smile of someone who expected me to be impressed by him. "You teach 4-year-olds?" he asked after we'd been talking for a few minutes. "Yep. That's—" He paused. "Actually harder than anything I do." I laughed. I didn't know then that he managed one of his family's car dealerships. I didn't know about the trust fund or the Greenwich backcountry estate or the generations of Bellingham wealth. He just seemed like a nice guy who didn't want to be at a charity event any more than I did. We exchanged numbers. He texted me the next day. We went to dinner. It felt easy, normal, real. He seemed different from the Greenwich boys I'd met before. He asked questions instead of giving answers. He listened. Or at least, I thought he did. 8 months before meeting his family. We dated for 18 months before he proposed. For the first 8 months, I didn't meet his family. "They're complicated," he said when I asked. "I just want to make sure you're ready before you meet them." I thought that was sweet. Protective. He was shielding me from something I assumed. Family drama, maybe. A difficult mother. I didn't push. I trusted him. During those 8 months, we existed in a bubble. Dinners at restaurants where he always insisted on paying. Weekends in the city. Long drives along the Connecticut coast. He asked about my work, my students, my childhood. He laughed at my jokes. He remembered the small things, my coffee order, my favorite flowers, the fact that I hated olives. He met my parents twice during that time, both dinners at our house on Maple Drive. My mother made pot roast. My father asked Garrett about his job, his plans, his intentions. Normal parent stuff. Garrett was charming, polite. My father seemed cautiously optimistic. My mother reserved judgment. "He's very smooth," she said afterward, washing dishes. "Is that bad?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "Just make sure he's the same person when things get hard." I filed that away. I didn't think about it again until much later. I thought he was protecting me. Now I wonder if he was protecting himself. Bellingham Estate, Greenwich Backcountry, Brunch, October 2024. I finally met his mother in October of last year. Brunch at the Bellingham Estate, a house that made my parents' place look like a garden shed. 7 bedrooms, 4-car garage, a circular driveway with a fountain in the center. Victoria Bellingham greeted me at the door wearing cream cashmere and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was 58, immaculately groomed, and she scanned me from head to toe in approximately 1.5 seconds. I felt catalogued, assessed, found wanting. "Krista," she said, taking my hands, "we've heard so much about you." "All good, I hope." "Of course." She smiled. "Come in. Let me show you the house." The tour was a performance. Every room had a story. Every piece of furniture had a pedigree. She mentioned the architect 3 times, the interior designer twice. By the time we reached the sunroom for actual brunch, I had a clear understanding of exactly how much money the Bellinghams had, and exactly how much they wanted me to know it. At brunch, she asked about my family. And your parents? What do they do? I remember the way she held her mimosa. Casual, almost bored. My dad's a plumber, my mom's a nurse. The pause was microscopic. Anyone else might have missed it. Well, Victoria said, smile brightening. Everyone has to start somewhere. She moved on to the next question without waiting for a response. But I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. The recalculation. The subtle downgrade. I told myself it didn't matter. She smiled when she said it. But her eyes had already made a decision about me. About my family. About our worth. 4 instances of silence over 10 months. Looking back, I can count the moments. The first time was at that brunch, when Victoria made the "everyone has to start somewhere" comment. Garrett was right there. He heard it. He said nothing. The second time was at a Bellingham dinner party, when Victoria introduced me to her friends as Garrett's little teacher friend. I smiled. Garrett smiled. Neither of us corrected her. The third time was on the phone, when I overheard Victoria tell Garrett that she hoped I understood the expectations that come with joining this family. He mumbled something non-committal. The fourth time was last month, when Victoria made a comment about my engagement ring being tasteful, considering. Considering what? She didn't specify. 4 times. 4 silences. I rationalized each one. He's just keeping the peace. He'll talk to her privately. He's picking his battles. He'll stand up when it matters. Looking back, that silence was the first red flag. I just didn't want to see it. Tuesday, first week of November 2025, 4:15 p.m. The phone call came 2 weeks after Garrett proposed. I was in my classroom, cleaning up after a particularly chaotic finger painting session, when my cell rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the 203 area code was Connecticut. Krista. Victoria's voice was cool and formal. I'm glad I caught you. Victoria, hi. Is everything okay? Everything is fine. I'm calling because we should have dinner. Both families. It's time to properly meet your parents. Something about the way she said properly made my stomach tighten. That sounds nice. When were you thinking? Saturday, 7 o'clock, the Delamar. I've already made reservations. The coastal room. She said it like a statement, not a question. Oh, okay. Let me check with my parents. I'm sure they'll be available. She paused. It's rather important, don't you think? Before the wedding planning begins in earnest? The Delamar Greenwich Harbor, coastal room. $185 per person prix-fixe. I'll confirm with them tonight. Wonderful. I'll have my assistant send the details to Garrett. Another pause. Do tell your parents it's semi-formal. I'd hate for there to be any confusion about the dress code. She hung up before I could respond. She didn't ask if Saturday worked. She informed. Phone call, 7:30 p.m. Tuesday. I called my parents that evening. My father listened quietly while I explained. The Delamar. Both families. Saturday night. The Delamar, he repeated. That's the place with the $40 salads, isn't it? Dad? I'm just asking. It's nice. It's where they want to do it. Then we'll be there. My mother came on the line. I could hear the worry in her voice before she even spoke. What should I wear, honey? Something semi-formal. A nice dress. Should I? She hesitated. Should I buy something new? I don't want to embarrass you. The words hit me like a slap. Mom. My throat tightened. You could never embarrass me. I just want everything to go well. This is important. For you. Macy's dress, navy blue, $89. First new dress in 6 years. I found out later she went to Macy's the next day. She bought a navy blue dress for $89. It was the first new dress she'd bought herself in 6 years. My mother hadn't asked me that question since my high school graduation. She was scared, and that scared me. Wednesday night phone call, 9:30 p.m. Garrett called me Wednesday night. So my mom told you about Saturday? She did. Great. It'll be good. Everyone getting to know each other. He paused. Just a few things. Things? Topics. Topics to avoid. He cleared his throat. Don't bring up politics with my dad. He has strong opinions. And don't ask my mom about the charity stuff. She likes to talk about it herself. And maybe just let her lead the conversation? It's easier that way. I was silent for a moment. Easier for who? 5 seconds passed. I counted. For everyone, he finally said. I wanted to push. I wanted to ask why I needed instructions for dinner with his family, why my parents would need to be careful, why easier was even a consideration. But I was tired. And I wanted to believe it would be fine. He didn't answer my question. And I was too tired to push. That was my mistake. 7:15 a.m. Saturday, the day of the dinner. I didn't sleep well Friday night. I was up at 6:30, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What if Victoria said something condescending? What if my father took offense? What if my mother felt out of place? I called my parents at 7:15. My mother answered on the first ring. I've been up since 5, she admitted. I pressed your father's shirt 3 times. I think I'm more nervous than my first day at the hospital. Mom, it's going to be fine. I know. I know. She didn't sound convinced. I just want them to see that we raised you right, that we're good people. Good people, as if that needed proving. You are good people, the best. I'm making your father wear his nice watch, the one from our anniversary. Seiko watch, anniversary gift, 2005. I smiled despite myself. He hates that watch. He'll survive. My mother hadn't been nervous about anything in decades. That's when I knew this dinner was going to be different. Navy blue dress from Macy's, $89. First new dress in 6 years. I drove to my parents' house at 4 o'clock to help them get ready. When I walked in, I saw the dress hanging on the back of my mother's bedroom door. Navy blue, simple cut, still with the tags on. She was standing in front of it, arms crossed, uncertain. Do you think it's too much? She asked. I can return it. I still have the receipt. The dress was beautiful, elegant, perfect for her. Mom, it's perfect. It was $89. She said it like a confession. From somewhere in the house, my father's voice. Eileen, you've worn the same 3 dresses to every event for 6 years. Keep the damn dress. My mother laughed. It was a nervous laugh, but it was real. I helped her with her hair. Simple, classic. She put on the small pearl earrings my father had given her for their 20th anniversary. When she finally looked in the mirror, I saw her shoulders relax slightly. Okay, she said. Okay, I can do this. My mother hadn't bought herself a new dress in 6 years. That night, she did. Because she wanted to make a good impression on people who had already decided she wasn't worth impressing. 2012 Toyota Camry, silver, 187,000 miles. My father drove. The Toyota Camry, 2012, silver, 187,000 miles. He'd washed it that afternoon, vacuumed the interior. It was as clean as a 14-year-old car could be. I suggested taking my car, or calling an Uber. This car got me to every job site for 10 years, my father said, opening the driver's door. It can get me to a dinner. I didn't argue. We pulled out of the driveway at 6:45 p.m. The Delamar was 20 minutes away. My father never liked being late. The drive was mostly quiet. My mother sat in the back with me, holding my hand. My father kept his eyes on the road. "Whatever happens tonight," he said, breaking the silence, "we don't apologize for who we are." "Clear?" "Clear," my mother said. "Clear," I said. We were ready. Or at least, we thought we were. None of us could have predicted what Victoria had planned. The Delamar Greenwich Harbor, 6:52 p.m. The Delamar appeared on our left, glowing against the November darkness. All glass and stone and soft golden lighting. The kind of place designed to make you feel either welcomed or warned, depending on who you were. My father pulled up to the valet stand. The valet, a young guy, maybe 20, looked at the Camry, then at my father, then back at the Camry. There was a hesitation. Barely a second, but enough. "Is this for valet, sir?" My father's face didn't change. He held out the keys. "It's a car, son. It parks the same as any other." The valet took the keys. We walked inside. That was the first judgment. It would not be the last. Coastal room, private dining, table for 8, view of Greenwich Harbor. The hostess led us through the main dining room, all white tablecloths and low murmurs and the soft clink of expensive silverware, to the coastal room in the back. It was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a long mahogany table set for 8, fresh flowers in the center. The kind of room where deals were made, families were merged, futures were decided. The Bellinghams were already there. Victoria stood as we entered, smile perfectly calibrated. "The Fosters," she said, spreading her arms. "So glad you could make it. I hope you found the place all right." I felt my mother stiffen slightly beside me. The Delamar is the most well-known restaurant in Greenwich. Everyone knows where it is. Victoria knew that. The question was designed to imply we didn't. "No trouble at all," my father said, voice even. "Nice place. Isn't it?" Victoria gestured toward the table. "Please sit. I've arranged everything." She had indeed arranged everything. The Bellinghams sat on the harbor side, Victoria, Douglas, Garrett, and Eleanor, his grandmother. The light from the windows created a soft halo effect around them. We were seated across from them, facing the door. The less desirable position. The one where you could see everyone entering. The one where the light was harsher. I noticed. I said nothing. The seating wasn't accidental. Nothing about Victoria was ever accidental. Prefix $185 per person, wine already selected. 2018 Chateau Margaux, $280 per bottle. Before we could even fully settle into our seats, Victoria was explaining the menu. "I took the liberty of ordering for the table," she said. "Prefix, 5 courses. The chef here is extraordinary. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." She hadn't asked what anyone wanted. "And the wine?" Douglas spoke for the first time, holding up a bottle like a trophy. "A 2018 Chateau Margaux, 280 a bottle. Only the best for tonight." He poured for the table, starting with Eleanor, then Victoria, then himself. The bottle made its way to our side last. My father watched the wine being poured into his glass. He didn't touch it. "Thank you," he said. "Though I should mention, I don't drink." The table went silent for a beat. "Oh." Victoria's smile flickered. "Well, more for the rest of us then." Douglas forced a laugh. No one else did. My father had never taken a sip of alcohol in his life, and he wasn't about to start to impress anyone. 38 years, 3 sick days, Donald Foster's work history. The first course arrived. Some kind of scallop with foam that tasted like the ocean had a head cold, and Douglas began his questioning. "So, Donald?" He leaned back in his chair, wine in hand. "Garrett tells me you're in the trades?" "Plumbing," my father said. "Plumbing." Douglas nodded slowly. Physical work. Hard on the back, I imagine. It has its moments. And you've been doing this how long? 38 years. Douglas's eyebrows rose. 38 years. Same job. That's impressive in its way. I caught the qualifier. In its way, as if the accomplishment needed an asterisk. Only missed 3 days, my father added, cutting into his scallop. 2 for my daughter's birth. 1 for my father's funeral. 2 days for Krista's birth. 1 day for Harold Foster's funeral. Douglas opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no response to that. For a moment, no one spoke. My father wasn't bragging, he was stating a fact. And facts made Douglas uncomfortable. 32 years on the night shift, Stamford Hospital, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Victoria turned her attention to my mother during the second course. Eileen. She tilted her head, the picture of concern. 32 years on the night shift? My goodness, that must be exhausting. You adjust, my mother said. But the hours. Victoria pressed a hand to her chest. I could never. I need my 8 hours of sleep. I don't know how you function. There was something in her voice. Not admiration. Something closer to pity. The kind reserved for people you feel sorry for, but would never want to be. My mother smiled, unfazed. You get used to it, she said. Besides, someone has to be there at 3 a.m. when the emergencies come in. Victoria had nothing to say to that. She turned to Garrett, redirecting the conversation to something about the wedding venue. My mother answered with grace. Victoria looked annoyed that she couldn't find an opening to attack. Eleanor Bellingham, 84 years old, the family matriarch. Throughout the first 2 courses, I noticed something. Eleanor wasn't participating. The Bellingham matriarch, 84 years old, silver-haired, dressed in understated black, sat at the head of the table and watched. She observed Victoria's performance. She observed Douglas's condescension. She observed Garrett's silence. And she observed my parents. Her eyes lingered on my father when he spoke about his work. They flickered to my mother when she answered Victoria's questions with quiet dignity. She hadn't said a word, but she was taking everything in. I didn't know what to make of it. Was she judging us too? Silently agreeing with her daughter-in-law? Or was she seeing something else entirely? The most powerful person in that room hadn't spoken yet. When she finally did, everything would change. Victoria's smile after every insult. The dinner continued. Course after course, comment after comment. Victoria asked my mother if she'd ever considered getting her degree, as if 32 years of nursing somehow wasn't qualification enough. Douglas asked my father if he had people who did the actual work now, or if he still got his hands dirty. Victoria wondered aloud whether our neighborhood was safe, because she'd heard things about Stamford. And through it all, she smiled. That perfect, polished, poisonous smile. It was the smile that made it worse. If she'd been openly hostile, we could have responded. But this veneer of politeness over contempt, was designed to keep us off balance, to make us wonder if we were imagining it, to make us question ourselves. I watched my parents absorb every slight. They didn't react. They didn't snap back. They answered with patience and grace as if they were dealing with difficult children rather than grown adults. But I saw my mother's hand tighten around her fork. I saw my father's jaw set slightly. They knew what was happening. They were choosing not to engage. Victoria smiled after every insult. That's what made it worse. 8:35 p.m., between main course and dessert. After the 4th course, Victoria set down her napkin. Krista, dear, she smiled at me, that smile, and tilted her head. Let's step outside for a moment. Just some wedding details I'd like to discuss. Girl talk. I glanced at Garrett. He nodded slightly. Go ahead. Sure, I said. I followed Victoria out of the coastal room into the quiet hallway beyond. The noise of the main dining room was muffled here. The lighting was softer, intimate. She closed the door behind us. I wanted to speak with you privately, she said, turning to face me. Woman to woman. Her smile was gone now. Her face had changed. The mask was off. I should have said no, but I wanted to believe she was trying. The hallway outside the coastal room, 15 feet from the dining table. I'm going to be direct with you, Victoria said. I like you, Krista, I do. And Garrett clearly loves you. But this wedding, it needs to represent our family, our standards. I felt the temperature drop between us. What do you mean? She stepped closer. Her voice was low, controlled, precise. Your parents, she said. They're lovely people, I'm sure. Salt of the earth. But they don't belong at a Bellingham wedding. Do you understand? I didn't speak. I couldn't. It's not personal, she continued. It's practical. Our guest list includes senators, CEOs, people who matter. Your father, fixing pipes. Your mother, working night shifts. How would that look? Her mask was off, and what was underneath was exactly what I'd feared. They'll embarrass us in front of our guests. I'm not saying they can't be part of your life, Victoria said, as if she were being reasonable. Just not this part, not the public part. We could arrange a small gathering afterward. For your side. Something more appropriate for them. Appropriate. The word landed like a slap. Victoria. Krista, listen to me. She put a hand on my arm. Her nails were perfect. Blood red. Your parents shouldn't come to the wedding. They'll embarrass us in front of our guests. She said it like she was explaining something to a child. It's nothing personal. It's just, they're not our kind of people. Surely you understand. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I understood all right. I understood perfectly. And then I heard the door open behind us. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. And then I heard the door behind us open. Door opens. Donald Foster standing 3 feet behind Krista. My father was standing in the doorway. He was looking for the restroom. That's what he told me later. He'd stepped out just as Victoria was speaking. He heard everything. I turned and saw his face. It didn't change. There was no shock, no anger, just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes before a storm. Excuse me, he said, his voice perfectly level. I was looking for the restroom. Victoria's face went white. Her hand dropped from my arm. My father looked at her. He didn't say anything else. He just looked. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then he turned and walked back into the dining room. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her. And she knew he'd heard. 10 seconds. Garrett's silence. Garrett appeared in the doorway a moment later, behind my father. He'd heard the end of it. I could tell by his face. That panicked, guilty look of someone who knows they should do something but doesn't know what. I looked at him, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry, the man I'd defended to my friends, to my own doubts, for 18 months. Garrett? My voice was small. I hated how small it sounded. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his mother, looked at his shoes. 10 seconds passed. I counted them in my heartbeat. He didn't say a word. Garrett looked at me. Then he looked at the floor. And I had my answer. 8:42 p.m. Return to the coastal room. We walked back to the table in silence. My father sat down first, calm and unhurried, as if nothing had happened. He picked up his water glass, took a sip, set it down. My mother looked at me as I took my seat. One glance was enough. She knew. She always knew. Victoria followed a few moments later, Her composure cracked, but not broken. She smoothed her napkin, adjusted her hair, smiled at Eleanor as if everything were fine. It wasn't fine. The room had shifted. Everyone could feel it. The temperature at that table had dropped 20 degrees, and dessert hadn't even arrived. 45 seconds of silence, menu dessert untouched. No one spoke. The dessert menus lay untouched. The waiter hovered near the door, sensing that something was wrong but not knowing what. My father sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. He wasn't angry, not visibly. He was simply present, observing, waiting. Victoria kept glancing at him, waiting for the explosion that didn't come. That was the worst part for her, I realized. She had prepared herself for confrontation. She had not prepared for silence. Douglas cleared his throat. "So," he said, too loud, too jovial. "Dessert. The chocolate soufflé here is apparently extraordinary. Eleanor, you love chocolate." Eleanor didn't respond. Victoria kept glancing at my father, waiting for an explosion that never came. The silence was worse. EV dealership project, $6 to $8 million needed. Douglas, desperate to salvage the mood, did what he always did when uncomfortable. He talked about business. "Actually," he said, swirling his wine, "speaking of the future, we're looking at expanding into EV, electric vehicles. Tesla's model has proven that traditional dealerships need to adapt. Big opportunity. Big investment needed, of course." He said it to the table at large, but his eyes flicked to Eleanor, looking for approval. "We've been talking to some local investment groups," he continued. "Actually, there's one firm that keeps coming up. Foster Family Holdings, conservative approach, long-term focus. Exactly what we need for something like this." My mother's hand tightened around her napkin. My father's expression didn't change, but I stopped breathing. He had no idea he'd just handed my father the key to everything. Eleanor's first direct question of the night. Eleanor had been silent all evening. Now, finally, she spoke. "Mr. Foster?" Her voice was clear, commanding, the voice of a woman who had spent 60 years in rooms full of powerful men and had learned to make them all listen. My father looked up. "My son and daughter-in-law have talked all evening," Eleanor said, "but I haven't heard from you. Tell me, 38 years in one trade. What's the secret to staying that long?" It wasn't condescension. It wasn't pity. It was genuine curiosity. For the first time all night, someone had asked my father a real question. For the first time all night, someone asked my father a real question and wanted a real answer. No secret. Show up. Do it right. Don't quit. My father considered the question. He wasn't the kind of man to speak without thinking. "No secret, ma'am," he said finally. "Show up. Do it right. Don't quit. That's it." Eleanor nodded slowly. "My husband built this family's business the same way," she said. "One car at a time, one customer at a time. Before it was an empire, it was a man with a single lot and a dream." Something shifted in the room. Douglas looked uncomfortable. Victoria looked confused. Eleanor wasn't comparing my father to them. She was comparing him to herself, to her husband, to the original Bellingham, the one who had built everything from scratch, before inheritance turned it into entitlement. She wasn't comparing. She was recognizing, and Victoria looked like she wanted to disappear. "Sold 70% last year." Eleanor leaned forward, interested now. "And your company? Foster Plumbing? I assume you're planning retirement?" My father shrugged. "Sold 70% last year. Still consult 2 days a week. I like the work." "Sold 70%. Eleanor repeated the words slowly, her eyes sharpening. Douglas froze mid-sip. Victoria blinked. Eleanor heard what Douglas and Victoria missed. A man doesn't sell 70% of a business unless that 70% is worth something significant. Perhaps we should discuss the wedding. Perhaps we should discuss the wedding venue. The Greenwich Country Club has availability in June, and I thought, in a moment. Eleanor didn't even look at her. I'm speaking with Mr. Foster. 6 words. That was all it took. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. Douglas stared at his plate. Garrett looked like he was considering whether he could fit under the table. In 40 years of marriage, Victoria had never been silenced that quickly. In 40 years of marriage, Victoria had never been silenced that quickly. Eleanor had spoken 6 words. That was enough. Foster Family Holdings, LLC. Douglas, eager to change the subject from his wife's humiliation, returned to safer ground. Money. This Foster Family Holdings, he said, trying to sound casual. The investment firm I mentioned. I wonder if you know them. Being local. Same last name. Isn't that funny? My father set down his water glass. I do know them, he said. Oh? Douglas perked up. Any insight? We've been trying to set up a meeting, but they're selective, apparently. They are. Victoria rolled her eyes slightly. Of course the plumber knows about a local investment firm, her expression said. And how do you know them exactly? Douglas asked. My father looked at him. That would be us, he said. Me and Eileen. We set it up in 2019 to manage some properties. Foster Family Holdings, LLC, established 2019. The table went silent. Douglas's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Victoria's face went white. Eleanor Bellingham, sharp as ever. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, with interest. Foster Family Holdings? She repeated. That's an interesting coincidence. You manage investment properties? A few, my father said. 2 duplexes in Fairfield County, had a 5-acre lot in Westport from my father. Sold that last year. Westport. Eleanor nodded. Prime real estate. Developer thought so. Paid 8.5. Douglas laughed nervously. 8,500 for 5 acres? My father didn't blink. Million. $8.5 million. Westport, Connecticut. The wine glass in Victoria's hand trembled. She set it down before it could spill. 33 years of compound growth. Eleanor wasn't done. And the rest? She asked. Surely property isn't your only investment. My mother spoke for the first time in 20 minutes. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. We've been putting money into an index fund since 1992, she said. Every month. Dawn read a book by John Bogle, the Vanguard founder, and thought it made sense. So we just kept doing it. Didn't miss a month in 33 years. Vanguard Index Fund, 1992 to 2025. 33 years of compound growth. Eleanor's expression shifted. Something like respect crossed her face. 33 years, she murmured. Every month. Do you understand what that kind of discipline creates? Douglas was doing the math. You could see it on his face. The slow, horrified realization that the plumber was worth more than him. Douglas was doing the math. You could see it on his face. The slow, horrified realization that the plumber and the night shift nurse were worth more than he was. Victoria, stop talking. Victoria, desperate now, tried to recover. Well, she said, her voice brittle, money isn't everything. It's not the only measure of... Victoria. Eleanor's voice cut through the room like a blade. Stop talking. Eleanor silences Victoria. Second time. The room went absolutely still. Douglas stared at the table. Garrett looked physically ill. My parents sat quietly, their faces betraying nothing. And Victoria, perfect, polished, poisonous Victoria, sat in humiliated silence, her entire worldview collapsing around her. In all my time knowing the Bellinghams, I had never seen Victoria shut down so completely. And it wasn't my father who did it. It was Eleanor. Net worth comparison. Foster versus Bellingham. In the silence that followed, I found myself doing the math. Foster Family Holdings, 2 duplexes, the Westport land sale, 33 years of index fund contributions, the company sale, my parents' retirement accounts. I didn't know the exact number. I still don't. Not really. But I knew enough. My parents, the plumber and the night shift nurse, in their old house with their old cars and their clipped coupons, were worth nearly $20 million. The Bellinghams, with their estate and their dealerships and their country club memberships, were worth maybe $35 million on paper. But most of that was tied up in the business, in real estate, in things they couldn't easily touch. Liquid wealth? Actual freedom money? My parents might actually have had more. Douglas went pale. Victoria stopped breathing. And I hadn't said a single word. The moment of truth. The desserts arrived. No one touched them. I turned to Garrett. The table was silent. Everyone was watching. My parents. His parents. Eleanor. Your mother, I said, my voice steady, told me my parents shouldn't come to our wedding. That they would embarrass your family. I paused. You heard her. I could see Garrett's throat move as he swallowed. What do you have to say? Everyone at that table heard me, and everyone waited for Garrett. 10 seconds of silence. Garrett opened his mouth, closed it. He looked at his mother, at his father, at his grandmother, then back at me. I watched him struggle. I watched him search for words that wouldn't make anyone angry. Words that would keep the peace. Words that would let him stay in the middle. But there was no middle. Not anymore. I gave him 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nothing. I gave him 10 seconds. He used 9 of them saying nothing. She didn't mean it that way. When Garrett finally spoke, he said exactly the wrong thing. Krista. His voice was weak, pleading. My mom just... She didn't mean it that way. She's just protective of the family image. You know how she is. Can we talk about this later? Please? She didn't mean it that way. You know how she is. Can we talk about this later? I stared at him. This man I had loved. This man I had defended. This man I had planned to spend my life with. He wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to stand up. He wasn't going to choose me over his comfort. He was going to manage his mother, manage me, manage everything so he never had to feel uncomfortable. That's when I knew. He wasn't going to change. He was going to manage. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Eleanor spoke. Miss Foster. She was looking at me now, her eyes soft with something that might have been sympathy. I apologize for my daughter-in-law's words. They were beneath this family, or at least, beneath what this family should be. Then she turned to Garrett, her grandson, the boy she had watched grow up, the man he had become. And you, Garrett. Her voice was cold now, final. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Garrett looked like he'd been slapped, but he still didn't speak. That was the final answer. Garrett looked like he'd been slapped, but he still didn't speak. And that was the final answer. Voice. No theatrical exit, just a man who voice. No theatrical exit, just a man who had heard enough and decided it was time to leave. Thank you for dinner, he said, looking around the table. Then his eyes settled on Eleanor. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect. Mrs. Bellingham, he said, it was a pleasure meeting you. Then he turned to Victoria. He didn't say anything, didn't need to, just looked at her for a long moment. The woman who had called him an embarrassment, who had tried to exclude him from his own daughter's wedding, who had judged him without knowing a single real thing about him. Then he walked toward the door. My father didn't need to say anything to Victoria. His silence said everything. She deserves better. My mother rose next. She straightened her navy blue dress, the one from Macy's, the first new dress she'd bought herself in 6 years, and looked at Victoria. "I worked the night shift for 32 years, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. So my daughter could have choices, good choices. She looked at Garrett, then back at Victoria. She deserves better. 4 words. She deserves better. Then she followed my father out. My mother had never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Those 4 words hit harder than any shout. The engagement ring on the table. I stood up last. Garrett was looking at me, his eyes desperate, pleading. "Don't do this. Not here. Not like this." "I loved you, Garrett." My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. "But I won't marry someone who can't stand up for the people I love." I reached down and pulled the engagement ring from my finger. A princess-cut diamond, 3 carats. Flawless. I set it on the table in front of him. "Goodbye." I didn't look back. I walked out of the coastal room, through the restaurant, past the bar where people were laughing and oblivious, into the cold November night where my parents were waiting by the valet stand. My father had already retrieved the Camry, the 2012 Toyota, silver, 187,000 miles. The car the valet had hesitated to take. I got in the back seat. My mother reached over and took my hand. No one spoke. We drove home in silence, the 3 of us together, unbroken. We left the way we came, quiet, together, unbroken. 14 missed calls, 48 hours. Garrett called 14 times in the next 48 hours. I didn't answer. He texted too. Long messages, short messages, voicemails that I deleted without listening to. "Krista, please. I'm sorry. Can we just talk? I'll talk to my mom. I'll fix this. I promise. Please. I love you. Don't do this." I drafted a response once, typed it out, stared at it, deleted it. You had your chance to fix it. You chose silence. I didn't send it. There was nothing left to say. Victoria didn't call. Douglas called once, ostensibly to apologize, but mostly, I think, to ask about foster family holdings. I didn't answer that one either. Garrett finally found his voice. 2 days too late. Handwritten letter on Bellingham family letterhead. 1 week later, a letter arrived. Cream envelope, heavy cardstock, the Bellingham family crest embossed in the corner. Inside, a single page of handwritten text. "Miss Foster, I wanted to write to you personally, though I recognize that no letter can undo what was said. Your parents reminded me of something I had forgotten, a time when this family earned its success rather than inherited it. My husband started with nothing, a small lot, a second-hand desk, and more ambition than sense. He would have recognized your father immediately. He would have liked him. My grandson did not deserve you. I am sorry for that. Sorrier than I can express. But for what it's worth, I was proud to share a table with your father and mother. They represented everything a family should be. With respect, Eleanor Bellingham." I read the letter 3 times. Then I drove to my parents' house and showed it to them. My mother cried. My father didn't, but his eyes were bright. "She didn't owe us anything," my mother said, holding the letter. "But she wrote anyway." Eleanor didn't owe us anything, but she wrote anyway. And that letter meant more to my parents than any apology from Victoria ever could. Victoria loses her position 3 months later. The story got out, as stories always do in small, wealthy communities. I don't know who talked. Maybe a waiter overheard. Maybe Eleanor mentioned it to someone. Maybe Douglas. In a moment of weakness or whine, let something slip. But within a month, the whispers had spread through Greenwich. Did you hear about the Bellinghams? The dinner with Garrett's fiancé? Apparently the parents, the ones Victoria tried to exclude, were worth more than Douglas. A plumber. Can you imagine? 20 million. She told them they'd be an embarrassment. Victoria tried to control the narrative, of course. She always did. But the truth was too delicious to suppress. 3 months later, she quietly stepped down as vice chair of the Junior League chapter. Personal reasons, the announcement said. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just stepped out of the way. 1247 Maple Drive. Meatloaf. Sunday football. 2 months later, I was sitting in my parents' living room. Nothing had changed. Same house, same furniture, same crack in the front step that my father had fixed twice and would probably fix again. My mother was in the kitchen, making meatloaf. My father was in his chair, watching football, occasionally yelling at the TV when the refs made a bad call. The Toyota Camry was parked in the driveway. 187,000 miles and counting. You okay, kiddo? My father asked during a commercial break. I thought about the question, about the last 2 months, about Garrett's unanswered calls, about Victoria's humiliation, about Eleanor's letter, about the ring I'd left on the table. Yeah, Dad, I said. I am. He nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the game. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. 35 years of marriage, the only wealth that matters. I think about that dinner a lot, about Victoria's words, about Garrett's silence, about Eleanor's recognition. But mostly, I think about my parents. They never told me we were wealthy because they never thought of themselves that way. They were just two people who showed up every day, saved what they could, and loved each other for 35 years. My father still drives that 2012 Camry. My mother still works occasional shifts at the hospital, not because she needs to, but because she likes it. They still live in the house on Maple Drive. They still clip coupons sometimes, out of habit. They could buy a mansion. They could drive luxury cars. They could dress in designer clothes and join country clubs and throw their money around like the Bellinghams do. But that's not who they are, and that's the point. The Bellinghams thought money was about display, about status, about proving to the world that you were better. My parents understood that money is about freedom, about choices, about the ability to walk away from a table when someone insults you. Not because you have to, but because you can. That's the only kind of wealth that matters. My father still drives that 2012 Camry, and I've never been prouder. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, maybe you've been underestimated, maybe you've had to stand up for your family, maybe you know what it's like to be judged by people who don't know a thing about you. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and take care of the people who showed up for you when no one else did.